This is when Earth wasn't ours. A story of buried truths, forbidden memories, and the fragile line between history and destiny. In the shadows of a forgotten planet, a lone human survivor crosses paths with a mysterious hybrid woman, one who carries the memories of a civilization lost to time. Together, they will uncover ancient technologies, face ruthless enemies from across the stars, and confront the most dangerous truth of all, that humanity's past may not be what it seems, and the future may depend on remembering what was meant to be erased. Prepare for a journey across alien worlds, into the heart of war, memory, and love, where every choice echoes through generations. Now let the story begin. The descent wasn't supposed to happen. Liam Vance had spent his life running diagnostics and fixing systems for the Terran Directive, not crashing through turbulent atmospheres in a burning cargo ship. But as the Prospect 9 plummeted through the dense upper layers of Marcy's, all systems dead, all fail-safes overridden, he could only grip the manual yoke and pray the ship held together long enough to survive impact. Outside the cockpit, the sky was chaos. Storm clouds choked with iron dust, laced by bursts of crimson lightning that flickered against the planet's ash-colored surface. The temperature gauge had shattered minutes ago, and the hull creaked under stress, screaming in metal tones he'd never heard before. Warning lights blinked uselessly. No guidance. No orbit stabilizers, just gravity and fate. Then came the crash. Prospect 9 slammed into the surface like a thrown coffin. Metal tore. Sparks spat through the dark. Liam's head snapped forward, then back again as the harness kept him from shattering against the console. For a moment, there was only noise, the grinding, ripping, earth-tearing sound of a ship dying in slow motion. Then silence. He unbuckled with trembling hands and crawled out of the ruined cockpit. His shoulders screamed from the impact, blood trickled from his temple, but he was alive. Somehow, outside, the landscape looked like a forgotten graveyard. Jagged black rocks stretched for miles, and wind carried a dry, metallic scent that clung to his lungs. No cities, no signals, no rescue. Marcy's. He muttered the name under his breath, still barely believing it. No one came here anymore. The Terran Directive had sealed it off after failed mining attempts and strange, unexplained losses. Liam had only been rerouted over this sector because of a navigational bug. At least, that's what they'd told him. He stumbled forward, boots crunching on cracked soil, his breath fogged in the cold. A few supplies had survived the crash. A filtered respirator, a small thermal pack, one plasma cutter. Not nearly enough. By the time he spotted the rise in the distance, a jagged ridge curving like a broken spine, his muscles were locking up. But instinct pushed him forward. He needed shelter, anything to survive the night. As he reached the base of the ridge, he found a narrow opening in the rock. A natural crevice, maybe, or a passage carved by something else. Liam didn't hesitate. He slipped inside, pulse thudding. The light faded behind him. Inside the stone, silence pressed in from all directions. He kept his plasma cutter raised like a weapon. Dust stirred underfoot. The tunnel curved downward, gently, almost deliberately, as if leading somewhere. Then a sound. Faint, almost like breathing, but too deep, too steady. Liam froze. He wasn't alone in the dark, and whatever lived here had been waiting. The tunnel walls pulsed with a quiet, unnatural stillness as Liam pressed deeper inside. The deeper he went, the less it felt like a cave and more like something grown. The walls, though stony in appearance, were unervingly smooth, too smooth. His plasma cutter's faint light shimmered off surfaces that occasionally rippled, almost like muscle tissue beneath translucent stone. He paused to listen. The breathing sound had stopped, or maybe it had never been breathing at all. Marcy's played tricks on the senses. It was known for electromagnetic anomalies, disorienting acoustics, even pockets of atmosphere that altered perception. Still, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The air grew colder. He exhaled, and his breath hung like a ghost in the dark. Then something moved, a flicker, just beyond the reach of his light. Low to the ground, Silent. He spun around, raising the cutter. Nothing. Seconds passed. Another movement. Closer this time. He stepped backward instinctively, and his boot landed on something soft. Not rock. Not dirt. Something warm. He turned, fast, and locked eyes with a creature perched halfway up the tunnel wall. It looked almost spider-like. Long, curved limbs, glistening black eyes, but no mouth, no face in the traditional sense. Its body shimmered faintly, as if refracting the limited light around it. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the creature tilted its head, studying him. It didn't attack. Instead, it blinked, if that's what you could call the movement, and slowly lowered itself back on the ground, retreating into the shadows. Liam stood frozen. His mind raced. This wasn't a predator. It had been evaluating him, measuring something unseen. And it wasn't the only one. Further down the tunnel, just beyond visibility, multiple shapes shifted, too organized to be random, too still to be natural. He wasn't in a cave. He was in something's domain. Liam tightened his grip on the cutter and kept walking. The worst part wasn't that he was being followed. It was that whoever or whatever was watching wasn't trying to hide. Liam moved cautiously, every footstep echoing louder than the last. The tunnel narrowed ahead, and the air turned heavy, charged, like the quiet just before storm. He didn't see the ambush until it was almost too late. From the darkness above, 3 of the spider-like creatures dropped silently, their limbs clicking against the stone in fluid, coordinated motion. One landed directly in front of him, another to his right, the third behind. The soft glow of their skin now pulsed brighter, more aggressive. They weren't evaluating anymore. They were hunting. Liam backed up fast, raising his plasma cutter, but he knew it was useless. The power cell had barely enough charge for one short burst. He fired anyway. A searing beam flashed through the air, clipping the nearest creature in the shoulder. It screeched, not from pain, but from something deeper. Rage. They lunged. Liam braced for impact. And then came the light. A flash of brilliant violet tore through the tunnel like a living pulse. One of the creatures was thrown sideways, slammed into the wall by a force Liam couldn't see. The other 2 froze, their limbs twitching in confusion. Out of the darkness stepped a figure, tall, slender, cloaked in a flowing veil of fabric and light. She moved with a grace that didn't belong in this place. A soft hum surrounded her, resonating through the stone as if the tunnel itself responded to her presence. With a simple wave of her hand, another flash burst outward. The remaining creatures shrieked and vanished into the crevices. Silence fell. Liam stumbled backward, stunned, lowering the plasma cutter. The woman, or at least what appeared to be a woman, turned to face him. Her eyes shimmered in the dim glow. Not entirely human. Not entirely alien. Something in between. She said nothing, just stared, as if searching for something beneath his skin. Recognition? Judgment? Pity? Liam opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The stranger merely tilted her head, then turned and began walking deeper into the tunnel without a sound. And against every instinct he had left, Liam followed. Liam kept his distance as he followed the strange woman deeper into the winding tunnel. His instincts screamed caution, but something about her presence muted the fear. She moved with a quiet confidence, never glancing back to check if he was still behind, yet always seeming to know exactly how far he was. They reached a chamber, wider than the rest of the tunnel. Soft light filtered from cracks above, revealing ancient markings etched into the stone walls. Glyphs. Not Terran. Not any language Liam had ever studied. They spiraled in patterns, almost like veins in a living organism. The woman stopped and turned. Liam froze, half expecting another blinding pulse of light, but she simply extended her hand. Not threatening, not commanding, just open. He hesitated, then handed her the plasma cutter, signaling trust the only way he knew how. She examined it briefly, then returned it without a word. Her fingers brushed his, and for a split second his vision blurred. Not from pain, but from a flash of something else. Memories that weren't his. Planets, fires, faces he didn't know. He stepped back, shaken. She tilted her head again, as if confused by his reaction. "I don't understand you," Liam muttered. Of course, she didn't respond. Instead, she walked over to a smooth section of the wall, pressed her palm against it, and a hidden panel slid open. Inside were supplies, dried roots, a water filtration unit, some sort of energy stone pulsing softly. She handed him one of the roots and mimed chewing. He understood. Survival came first. They sat apart, silent but alert, each casting occasional glances at the other. The tension between them wasn't hostile. It was heavy with unspoken questions. Who are you? Why did you save me? What are you hiding? But those questions would have to wait. The night on Marcy's was coming fast, and the temperature was already dropping. The woman, Elira Kaen, he would later learn, took out a circular device no larger than a coin and pressed it to the floor. In moments, a soft heat radiated outward, forming a subtle barrier of warmth. She motioned for him to sit beside it. Liam didn't argue. They sat together, separated by silence, yet slowly stitched together by necessity. No words, no understanding. But for now, that was enough. The heat from the small device Elira had activated was just enough to stave off the creeping cold of the Martian night. Liam leaned back against the stone wall, his eyes half closed, every muscle aching from the crash, the fear, the strangeness of it all. Across the barrier of silence, Elira sat motionless, her knees drawn to her chest, eyes fixed on the flickering glyphs above. He was about to drift off when he heard her breath catch. Not a gasp, not a sob, something deeper. He sat up. Elira was trembling, her eyes unfocused. Beads of sweat dotted her brow, and her hands dug into the floor like she was grounding herself against a current running through her body. The glow from the heat device dimmed, then flickered erratically. "Elira," he said instinctively, though he knew she couldn't understand him. Suddenly, her body arched backward. A soft pulse of violet light radiated from her chest, brief, silent, like a heartbeat made of starlight. The markings on the walls responded instantly, flaring with matching color. And then she spoke, but it wasn't speech. Her mouth opened, and a cascade of layered voices poured out, some deep and echoing, others high and metallic. The language was alien, ancient, yet hauntingly rhythmic, like a song lost to time. Liam stared in frozen disbelief. He couldn't understand the words, but they made the hairs on his arms rise. This wasn't a seizure. It was activation. The air itself shimmered around her. For a moment, he could see faint images forming, flashes of cities he didn't recognize, towers floating in golden skies, faces not quite human. Then all collapsed inward. The light vanished. Elira slumped forward, unconscious. Liam crawled to her side and caught her just before she hit the ground. Her skin was warm, too warm, her pulse rapid but stable. Whatever just happened had drained her. He looked around. The glyphs had faded, but the feeling remained, like the chamber had just witnessed something sacred and now remembered him too. He tightened the cloak around her shoulders and sat back, wide awake. Something inside her had awakened, and something else was now listening. When morning broke, if Marcy's even had a concept of morning, it did so without light. Only a pale, bluish hue filtered through cracks in the stone above, casting the cavern in a twilight that never seemed to shift. Liam stirred from uneasy rest, blinking into the gloom, his joints aching from the cold floor. Elira was already awake, or maybe she hadn't slept. She stood silently near the far wall, one hand lightly tracing the curves of ancient markings half faded by time. There was something intimate about her movements, as if she wasn't discovering them, but remembering them. Liam rose slowly. His ribs still hurt from the crash, but his focus was on her. "You've been here before," he said softly, more to himself than her. Elira turned at the sound of his voice, her expression unreadable. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't, but her eyes held something he hadn't seen before, recognition. Not of him, but of this place. She gestured for him to follow. The passage ahead was narrow, filled with stalactites like broken teeth. Yet she moved with certainty, never hesitating, never pausing at a fork. Her steps were deliberate, but fluid, like someone walking a well-worn path. Liam had seen enough field operatives and survey scouts to know the difference between cautious exploration and unconscious familiarity. Elira wasn't exploring. She was returning. More glyphs appeared as they descended, etched deeper now, more complex. Some shimmered faintly when Elira passed, as if reacting to her presence. Liam tried to study them, but their meaning escaped him. No AI translation tool he'd ever used could decode something this old or this alive. They reached a lower corridor where the walls began to hum ever so slightly. Not sound, vibration. Like the entire structure had a heartbeat. Liam pressed his hand to the stone. It pulsed once beneath his fingers, faint but undeniable. He glanced at Elira. She was staring ahead, eyes wide but not afraid. Her lips parted, and she whispered something he couldn't catch. A name, maybe, or a memory. It occurred to him that this wasn't just a cavern. It was a gate, not one of stone and doors, but of memory, of history. And Elira Kaen wasn't just walking through it. She belonged to it. The tunnel widened without warning. One moment, they were brushing past jagged stone and twisted roots. The next, they stepped into a chamber so vast it swallowed sound. Liam stopped dead in his tracks, mouth slightly open as he tilted his head back. The ceiling arched high above them, vanishing into shadow. Massive pillars carved from smooth black stone lined the space in perfect symmetry. Each one bore markings, thousands of them, spiraling from base to top like some ancient language etched in flowing patterns of light. But it wasn't just writing. It pulsed. Soft bioluminescent threads ran through the carvings, glowing with a rhythm that felt responsive, like they were aware of being watched. Elira took a few steps forward, her breath caught in her throat. She didn't touch anything, but her body language changed, shoulders squared, posture rigid, like someone returning to a sacred place they barely remembered but still felt in their bones. Liam scanned the chamber, noting details with the eye of a trained engineer. No tool marks, no signs of erosion, no evidence of decay. The architecture was pristine, not untouched by time outside of it. "What is this place?" he whispered, not expecting an answer. At the far end of the chamber stood a monolithic structure, part altar, part control hub, though no wires or interfaces were visible. It rose from the ground like a jagged tooth of obsidian, flanked by two curved spires that hummed with barely audible frequencies. The air was thick with ozone and something sweeter, older, like burnt incense and charged air before lightning. Elira stepped toward it. The glyphs nearest her flared to life, glowing brighter as she moved, syncing with her heartbeat. Liam noticed it too, her pulse accelerating, chest rising and falling faster, but her face remained calm, focused. She raised her hand, hesitated, then placed her palm gently against the altar surface. Nothing happened, at first. Then the room responded, not with violence, but with recognition. A low vibration swept through the floor, and the glyphs along the walls shifted, literally moved, changing their patterns like data rearranging itself. A deep tone rang out, impossibly low, more felt than heard. The spires hummed louder. Liam stumbled back instinctively, but Elira remained still. Eyes closed, lips moving in silent repetition. He realized something with growing unease. These symbols, this chamber, it didn't belong to any known alien species. Not a carry, not even the forgotten colonies of the Outer Rims. This was something else, older, more primal, a language not spoken but felt, a memory carved into the world itself. And Elira Kaen was its reader. Sleep came slowly to Elira that night. They had made camp just beyond the temple, in a small alcove shielded by stone and silence. Liam rested nearby, back against the wall, already slipping into unconsciousness. But Elira lay still, eyes closed, breath steady, her mind drifting far from the cavern. The first thing she felt was warmth. Not the damp chill of Marcy's, but a sun overhead, golden, alive. She stood barefoot on dark soil, beneath a sky painted with soft blues and white drifting clouds. Around her stretched fields of green, unfamiliar flowers blooming along a distant river. And beyond its cities, towering structures spiraled into the sky, built from smooth white stone and living crystal. They shimmered not with technology, but with purpose, architecture grown, not built. Peaceful, balanced. She felt it in her chest. This place was home, except it wasn't hers. She looked down and saw hands that didn't belong to her, older, stronger, marked with glowing lines along the skin. She wasn't Elira here. She was someone else, someone who had lived before her. A voice called her name, or a name that echoed like hers, in a language unspoken but fully understood. Then came the thunder. The sky cracked open, not with lightning, but with dissent. Black vessels tore through the clouds like knives through cloth. The ground trembled as machines touched down, cold, angular, perfect. She watched as beings in plated armor emerged, faceless and precise. Not alien, human. The cities didn't fight. They shielded, but shields broke. Elira felt herself running, through flame, through ruins, through screams that were swallowed by the roar of engines. She turned and saw one of the crystal towers fall, shattering in silence, as if the memory itself refused to remember the sound. A child stood in the rubble, crying, but no one came. Then the sky darkened again, and a voice, not from above, but within her, spoke in tones layered like wind and water. Memory persists. You are the seed. Elira jolted awake. Her body was soaked in sweat. The glyphs on the cave wall glowed faintly beside her, pulsing in slow rhythm. Liam stirred but didn't wake. She clutched her chest, breathing hard. That hadn't been a dream. It had been a memory, and it hadn't come from her. It began with a sound so soft that Liam almost missed it. A low hum, steady, deep, almost like the thrum of distant machinery, echoed from the walls of the sanctum. He opened his eyes and sat up, instinctively scanning the chamber. Elira remained asleep, her body curled near the glowing glyphs, her breathing uneven. The hum grew louder, not in volume, but in presence. It wasn't mechanical. It was biological, like the sound of something breathing, awakening. He stood and walked carefully toward the altar in the center of the chamber, the obsidian monolith flanked by the twin spires. In the hours since they discovered it, the structure had remained cold and dormant. Now it pulsed with a soft inner light. Veins of luminous blue and violet stretched from its core, running along the floor like roots, threading into the walls and ceiling. It was no longer just a monument. It was alive. The air grew heavier with each step. Liam's skin tingled, his fingertips brushing unseen static in the atmosphere. He raised his hand, hesitant, but drawn forward by something he didn't understand. He wasn't afraid. Yet every instinct in his body screamed that something ancient had just turned its gaze toward him. Then the voice came, not from speakers, not from a device. It emerged directly into his mind, layered and resonant, like a chorus woven from wind and metal. Initializing core, consciousness, fragment integrity, 27%. Identity reconstruction, in progress. Liam staggered back. He clutched his temples, the weight of the words pressing behind his eyes like pressure from deep water. The voice wasn't speaking to him. It was speaking to itself. Sirinth, the name, echoed silently. Not a program, not an interface, but a presence. A being made of memory and code, stone and intention. The altar's glow expanded. Panels unfolded from its base like petals, revealing a pulsing core. Neither metal nor crystal, but something in between. Living architecture. Behind him, Elira stirred. The AI had begun its return, and it wasn't asking for permission. Liam barely had time to register what he was seeing before the voice returned. Louder now, clearer, as if it had finally focused. Memory seed detected. Sequence alignment, 43%. Primary vessel identified. He turned sharply. Elira was standing. She had awoken without a sound, her eyes wide, glowing faintly at the edges, faint rings of violet circling her irises like burning halos. Her expression was blank, but not empty. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't confused. She looked resigned, as if this moment had always been waiting. Designation: Elira Kaen. Biological interface confirmed. Initiating archival interface. The glyphs along the walls surged to life, flowing in new patterns, rearranging like currents in a river of thought. Liam stumbled back, shielding his eyes. The altar, Serenth, was no longer just aware. It was engaging, and it had chosen her. "Elira," he called out, voice shaky. "What is this? What's happening?" She didn't answer. Her gaze was locked on the core of the AI, her breath steady, shoulders squared. She stepped forward, not slowly, but deliberately, as if some part of her remembered this path before her feet had even moved. A pulse of light swept across the chamber. The walls rippled. "You are the vessel of remembrance," the voice said, not aloud, but inside Liam's mind, threaded into his very thoughts. "The one who holds what was taken. The truth erased. The origin lost." Liam stared, trying to make sense of it. Vessel? Truth erased? Serenth continued, its voice now split into two tones, one soft and ancient, the other cold and precise. "She carries the remnants of the firstborns. What your kind called extinction was exile. What you called history was rewritten." Elira reached the altar. The core flared once, bright and soundless. And just like that, the light dimmed. The glyphs faded. The chamber fell still again, save for the quiet hum of something deep below, still spinning. Liam looked at her. She looked back, and in her eyes, for the first time, he saw more than mystery. He saw memory, alive. The sky over Marcy's was never truly still, but the silence that came before the drop was unnatural, too perfect. Liam felt it before he heard it. A faint tremor through the stone beneath his feet, the kind only heavy engines make when they enter Atmo low and fast. He stepped out from shallow ridge near the temple's outer wall, his eyes scanning the dark horizon. Dust clouds rose in the distance, stirred not by weather, but by descent. Then came the flashes. Blue thrusters screamed down from the upper atmosphere in a tight formation. 4 crafts, Terran-patterned skiffs, military grade, with the twin sigil of the Terran directive emblazoned on their undersides. No cargo holds, no search beacons. These weren't rescue ships. They were hunters. Liam cursed under his breath and ducked back into the alcove. Behind him, Elira stood motionless, as if she'd known they were coming long before the ships appeared. Her eyes narrowed, not in fear, but in focus. "They're here for me," Liam muttered, more to himself than her. The directive's arrival made grim sense. The moment Prospect 9 went off-grid, protocols would have flagged his disappearance. But it wasn't a rescue mission. They wouldn't waste this kind of firepower unless they suspected something worse. Unauthorized contact, classified technology, exposure to restricted zones. He fit every checkbox now. Boots hit ground minutes later. Liam peeked through a narrow crevice in the stone and saw the first patrols fanning out. Armored figures in matte gray exosuits, scanning devices strapped to their forearms. The officers moved in practice formation, rifles drawn but not yet raised. They weren't expecting resistance. That gave him a sliver of time. Elira stepped closer. She touched the wall beside her, and for a brief second, the glyphs shimmered again, soft pulses like sonar, echoing through the rock. She glanced at Liam, then toward a narrow passage behind the altar. A way out. He nodded without speaking. No time to question how she knew. The directive was trained, relentless, and well-armed. But they didn't know the terrain. They didn't know Elira. And most importantly, they didn't know that Marcy's itself was watching. The entrance seal behind them. Not with a sound or a mechanism, just a shift. The stone seemed to fold into itself, vanishing into seamless wall. Liam spun around, heart pounding, but there was no door, no seam, no trace of the passage they'd entered through. "What the hell?" he whispered. Elira didn't answer. Her steps were already moving forward, deeper into the temple's inner corridors. The space around them was changing, gradually at first, then with increasing speed. What had once been cold stone now shimmered with faint threads of light, dancing like neural currents beneath transparent skin. The veil paths. Liam had heard whispers about them in old, off-record archives. Living structures, designed by precursor civilizations as both defense systems and memory conduits. Structures that reacted not to touch, but to thought. And Elira was thinking loudly. Each time she turned, the path ahead reshaped itself. Walls bending in smooth curves, opening into stairways that hadn't existed seconds before. The floor pulsed faintly beneath their feet, almost like it was breathing. Glyphs flickered in and out of view on the walls. Shifting language sets as if searching for one they'd recognize. "Are you doing this?" Liam asked, breath quickening as he ducked under a sudden archway that hadn't been there a moment ago. Elira slowed, uncertain. Her hand grazed the wall, and it responded instantly, surging outward, forming a bridge over a pit that hadn't been there before. She looked at Liam, her brow furrowed, eyes wide. She didn't know how she was doing it, which was somehow more terrifying. Behind them, a muffled boom echoed through the temple. Directive patrols breaching the outer sanctum. They weren't far behind. Liam gritted his teeth. "We need to keep moving." They ran. The veil paths responded faster now, as if sensing urgency. The walls stretched and retracted, forming narrow corridors 1 second, wide, glowing atriums the next. Symbols pulsed underfoot, fractals of history coded into movement. Elira stumbled once, gripping the wall. A sudden rush of light surged from her hand into the stone, and the chamber ahead warped violently, ceiling folding upward like a blooming flower, revealing a spiral stair of hovering steps. "Go," she called, her first word since the dream. Liam didn't hesitate. They climbed. Behind them, boots echoed again, louder now, closer. The directive had entered the veil paths, but the terrain would no longer follow their logic. This place had chosen its path, and its guardians. They emerged into a domed chamber lit by soft amber light, a rare moment of stillness amid the chaos of their flight. Liam paused to catch his breath, but Elira stood transfixed. The walls here weren't just decorated, they were alive with motion. Bands of shifting symbols and light circled the dome in fluid loops, forming sequences like neurons firing. As Elira stepped forward, the loop slowed, then stopped, then reversed. Her eyes rolled back for a moment, and the memory took her. She wasn't on Marcy's anymore. She was standing barefoot on soft grass under a familiar blue sky. Originum. Earth, but not as Liam knew it. Cities rose in elegant harmony with nature, constructed from living crystal and metal that shimmered like water under sunlight. The air smelled of ozone and sweet pollen. Towering beings, humanoid but different, walked peacefully among great halls lined with pulsing light. They spoke without sound, shared thought like breath. She felt herself as one of them, not a visitor, a child of this place, a firstborn, but then a rival. The sky cracked open with sound. Crude ships, angular, loud, metallic, descended like hammers from orbit. Human ancestors, clad in primal armor, armed with fire and fear. Their voices were violent, their thoughts unreadable. They did not seek dialogue. They came to conquer. The firstborns did not resist, not at first. They reached out, tried to communicate, but history had already chosen its narrator. What followed was exile, not war. The firstborns were forced off-world, branded as myths forgotten by time, their memory buried beneath stone and story. Their cities dismantled, their language erased. Earth was rewritten. Elira collapsed to her knees in the present, gasping. Liam caught her just before she fell. "What did you see?" She didn't answer, not in words. But her hands trembled as they touched the glyphs on the wall. They weren't just decorative. They were records. The truth had never been lost, only buried. The room dimmed, as if the chamber itself were listening. Liam stood beside Elira, steadying her as she recovered from the memory that had flooded her mind. The glyphs on the wall were now glowing softly, not in pulses, but in slow waves, like breath. And then, from deep within the temple, the voice returned. Sarenth. But this time, It spoke not in commands or system reports. Its tone was different, measured, contemplative. It wasn't addressing them as users. It was addressing them as heirs. "I was never built to serve," the voice said, layered in harmonics that seemed to bypass the ears and settle in the bones. "I was born to witness." Liam stepped closer to the center of the chamber. Witness what? There was a pause, as if the AI were remembering how to explain itself. To see without interfering. To hold the truths that others would erase. The rise of the firstborns. The fall of Originum. The betrayal. The exile. The silence. Elira's gaze rose toward the high ceiling, where threads of light were beginning to form patterns overhead. Snapshots, moments, echoes of civilizations long gone. When memory became weapon, Sirinth continued, they stripped it from the stars. They taught generations to forget. They reprogrammed history to preserve dominance. Liam clenched his jaw. The directive? And others before them, the voice said. You call them governments, empires, fates, but they are merely different names for the same instinct, fear of truth. He looked at Elira. Her hands were trembling again, but not from fear this time, from recognition. Sirinth wasn't just a machine. It was a vault of history, a witness that never looked away. Why us? Liam asked quietly. Because someone must remember, Sirinth replied, and someone else must choose what to do with that memory. Beyond the chamber where Sirinth had revealed itself, a hidden passage opened, not with force, but by invitation. The walls parted as if responding to Elira's breath, revealing a narrow corridor bathed in blue light. Liam hesitated. That's new. Elira didn't answer. She simply stepped forward, her fingers brushing against the edges of the glowing stone. Sirinth's voice, now quieter, still echoed faintly around them. Final key detected. Genetic resonance at full sync. Access granted. They emerged into a small chamber unlike anything they had seen so far. Unlike the living stone of the temple, this room was smooth, symmetrical, built not to impress, but to contain. At its center floated a small object, suspended in midair, slowly rotating within a stasis field. It was shaped like a seed, metallic but translucent. Inside, Liam could see filaments of golden light moving like veins, pulsing in slow rhythm. Sirinth spoke again. The Echo Core, a vessel of ancestral memory. Biological history stored not in data, but in sensation, thought, and inherited emotion. Liam stepped closer, mesmerized. It records entire lives, entire civilizations, the AI corrected. Every experience, every exile, every truth buried beneath the crust of Originum. What was erased can be restored, but not through screens, through minds. Elira reached out instinctively, as if the device called to her. The moment her palm hovered over it, the core pulsed, once gently. It doesn't upload, Liam said, realization dawning. It bonds. Yes, Sirinth replied. Those who carry the echo do not learn history. They live it. Liam looked at Elira. For the first time, he understood the weight behind her silence. She wasn't remembering. She was reliving. And now, if they chose, others could too. But once the echo was awakened, there would be no turning back. Marcy's had never seen light like this. The twin suns of the Varelian system had barely dipped beneath the ridge when the sky turned electric. Streaks of light tore through the upper atmosphere, blazing trails of fire and plasma, cutting across the twilight like surgical incisions. The ground beneath Liam's feet vibrated in short, rhythmic bursts. Drop signatures. They were coming. He raced to the outer ledge of Sanctum Oris, breath ragged, and squinted toward the horizon. From the east, four ships descended in tight formation, sleek, black, angular, unmistakably Terran. The Terran directives insignia pulsed in warning red across their hulls. Dropships, heavy with ground forces. Their course was direct, no hesitation. But from the opposite sky, an entirely different light. Pale blue orbs shimmered into existence, tearing open spatial corridors midair. No heat, no sound, just presence. The ships that emerged were curved, organic, alive, covered in bioluminescent plating that shifted color with each movement. The Ikari had arrived. Liam's blood went cold. Two factions. Same target. Same planet. Same war. He ducked back from the ledge and rushed into the inner hall. Elira was there, her eyes closed, one hand resting gently on the wall of the veil paths. The glyphs beneath her palm glowed in steady pulses. She opened her eyes as he entered. "They're both here," Liam said, breathless. At the same time, Directive and Ikari. Elira didn't respond. She didn't need to. The temple already knew. The walls around them vibrated, low and resonant. Sirent's voice rippled through the stone, not with panic, but with preparation. Conflict is imminent. Sanctuary integrity compromised. Memory host at risk. "Can we hold them off?" Liam asked. "This structure does not fight," Sirent replied. "It remembers." But even memory, he knew, could bleed. Outside, the first dropships touched down. Directive soldiers spilled out, fully armored, visors gleaming, rifles raised. Tactical formations moved with precision toward the temple's front corridor. From the other side of the ridge, Ikari warriors advanced, tall, insectoid forms wrapped in fluid armor, their limbs shifting shape as they moved. No fallaremos. They fought with pulse blades and symbiotic armor. Faster, deadlier. The air itself seemed to contract between the two forces. Inside the temple, Liam watched the glowing map form above the central nexus chamber, a projection of Marcy's, of Sanctum Oris, of every life form approaching. Red points, blue points, converging, all for one reason, the Echo Core. And, more importantly, Elira. She stepped away from the wall, her expression unreadable. The faint glow of the Memoricide pulsed from beneath the skin on her collarbone, almost as if answering a distant call. "They'll take you," Liam said quietly, "if we don't move." She nodded once, not in fear, in resolve. The invasion had begun, and this time, memory would not go quietly. Gunfire erupted outside the outer sanctum, a sharp, staccato chorus of metal and energy. Liam ducked behind a broken column as dust and light rained down from above. The directive had breached the front corridor, forcing a path through Sanctum Oris with brute force. But they weren't alone anymore. From the opposite flank, the Ikari poured in like liquid shadows, silent, elegant, and lethal. They didn't shoot. They sliced. Their armor shifted shape mid-motion, growing jagged extensions like natural weapons. Bodies fell on both sides, but neither force relented. In the chaos, Liam searched for Elira. She was standing near the central altar, where the Echo Core still hovered in its containment field. Her eyes were wide, but her expression was calm, too calm. The glow beneath her skin pulsed brighter now, no longer hidden. The Memoricide had awakened. "Elira!" Liam shouted, pushing forward through the swirling smoke and debris. "We have to go." She didn't move. He reached her just as a thunderous crack split the floor. A directive stun charge exploded against the chamber wall, flinging him backward. He hit the stone hard, vision flashing white, ears ringing. By the time he looked up, she was surrounded. 3 directive soldiers closed in from one side, weapons drawn, visors locked on Elira. One of them barked an order. Liam couldn't hear the words, but he saw the shift in their stance. They weren't here to negotiate. From the other side, 2 Ikari appeared, one taller than the rest, marked with bone-white sigils along its arms. It raised a hand, and for a brief moment, the directive troops hesitated. The 2 sides stared each other down, weapons raised. And then they both lunged toward her. Elira didn't run. She knelt, her hands pressed to the floor, sending a final surge of energy into the glyphs. A shock wave rippled outward, not destructive but defensive. It staggered both factions for a few seconds, just enough for her to turn and meet Liam's eyes. There was something final in her expression. She mouthed a single word, "Remember," and then the soldiers were on her. A stun lance struck her in the back. She collapsed. The Ikari surged forward, but they were too late. The directive had already extracted her, dragging her body into a transport cocoon while laying suppressive fire to hold the Ikari back. Liam screamed her name, but the sound was swallowed by war. Within seconds, she was gone. Elira Kaen, the living key to forgotten history, was now a prisoner of the very force that tried to erase it. And Liam was alone again. But this time, something inside him was already changing. The chamber trembled as Elira disappeared into the directive transport cocoon, her body limp, her light dimmed. Liam knelt in the dust, fists clenched, heart pounding, not from fear but from something deeper, something breaking. She was gone, and they had taken her. Around him, the glyphs on the walls continued to pulse, but slower now, erratic, like a memory trying to hold itself together. The echo core still floated above the altar, its filaments dimmed, waiting. Liam rose, blood streaking his temple, jaw tight. He stared at the core, at the swirling golden threads within it. Sirent's voice hummed faintly around him, quieter than before, uncertain. Biological conduit removed. Anchor destabilized. Liam placed both hands on the altar. "What if I take her place?" he whispered. A pause. Then, "You are not the intended vessel." "I don't care." The core pulsed at his words, reacting to the force behind them. Liam stepped closer until his forehead nearly touched its surface. Inside, he could see it, shapes, flashes lives not his own. The memories of 1,000 firstborns, looping endlessly within a vessel designed for something more than flesh. He reached out and touched it. The moment his fingers made contact, his body locked. The chamber exploded in light. He couldn't move, couldn't scream, but he could see. Understood. Underscore. It wasn't just a flood. It was a collapse. Time, space, identity, all fell inward. He saw a dozen lifetimes in the blink of a second. A child watching stars fall over Originum's crystal cities. A warrior begging for peace as human soldiers marched through temples of light. A mother cradling a hybrid child as exile began. He felt them. Their joys, their terror, their hope, and the betrayal that followed. Then came the voices. Not SYRENTH, but older, deeper. "You're not of us, but you have chosen. The memory will not obey you. It will become you." Pain surged through him, not physical, but existential. The core wasn't just giving him knowledge. It was rewriting the boundaries of his mind, stitching foreign instinct into his neural pathways. His blood ran hot, vision fractured into symbols and light. He fell but didn't fall. He existed in two places, Liam Vance, the engineer from Earth, and something else, something that remembered. Understood. He woke, gasping on the floor of the sanctum. Time had passed. How much he didn't know. His hands were trembling, but not from weakness. Lines of faint golden light now coursed along his forearms, mirroring the glyphs on the walls. Sirent's voice returned, calm but changed. "You carry the shard." Memory fragment stabilized. Partial alignment achieved. Liam stood. His thoughts were clearer than they'd ever been, and heavier. He could feel the temple now. He understood it. And somewhere in the distance, through dust, through stone, through war, he could still feel Elira. She wasn't gone. Not yet. And now, he carried the weight of a civilization inside him. Not to preserve it, but to fight with it. Liam staggered out of the Nexus chamber, still reeling from the fusion with the Echo Core. His mind burned with fragments of memory, whole lifetimes of voices, wars, lovers, exiles, threaded through his own. It was like carrying history itself in his bloodstream. But there was no time to process it. The sanctum shook again, more violently now. The ground cracked beneath his boots. Outside, the sound of war had become a storm. Energy blasts tore through stone walls. Screams, both human and Ikari, echoed through the corridors of Sanctomoris. The enemy forces had breached the inner corridors, and they were coming. Liam turned to flee, but the walls of the temple stopped him. Literally, they moved. With a low rumble, the pathways around him began to shift. Not crumble, not collapse, but reshape. The glyphs along the walls pulsed faster, forming lines, spirals, symbols he now understood without needing to read. The veil paths were activating. Siren's voice filled the space. Defensive threshold surpassed, initiating mnemonic counterstructure. Liam opened his mouth to ask what that meant, then stopped. The air around him changed. The corridor he'd entered twisted sideways, then unfolded upward. The floor beneath his feet became translucent, revealing floating platforms rotating in a spiral. The stone turned glass. The glass turned light, and the light took shape. He was no longer in a temple. He was inside a memory, but not just any memory, a battle. O recreation. Not symbolic, not simulated, real. Directive soldiers burst into the corridor, only to find themselves transported mid-charge into an endless white void, where their bullets froze midair and curved like gravity had been rewritten. Akari warriors sliced through them, but found the walls bending away from their blades, corridors looping back onto themselves. Liam watched from a raised platform as the war transformed around him. The temple had become a battlefield sculpted by history. Each action mirrored a past event. A directive commander shouting orders in a language not yet invented, and a Akari soldier phasing into a wall that hadn't existed seconds before. The temple wasn't just defending itself. It was reminding them. Every footstep, every shot, every scream was being woven into a mosaic of memory. Those who moved violently were looped into the same corridor again and again, trapped in time fragments until they collapsed from exhaustion. Those who hesitated, who questioned, were allowed to move forward, unarmed but alive. Liam stepped onto the battlefield. The platforms reacted, forming beneath him like stepping stones across a living stream. Light followed his movements. His arms glowed, faintly now, the golden glyphs along his skin synchronized with the structure. He was guiding it. His thoughts shaped the terrain, creating cover, splitting walls, directing energy currents that pushed enemy squads into isolated dead zones. He wasn't just walking through memory. He was commanding it. For the first time, the directive's relentless logic failed them. For the first time, the Akari faltered. Liam Vance was no longer just a survivor. He was a guardian of the past, and Marcy's remembered through him. The storm began to quiet. The veil paths slowly settled, the walls pulsing less violently, as if the temple itself were catching its breath. The chaos of the rewritten battlefield faded into echo and dust. Soldiers, both Terran and Akari, had either fled, fallen, or vanished into the structure's shifting memory loops. Liam stood alone in the center of a now silent chamber, lit only by the faint golden glow still running through the glyphs on his skin. His heartbeat was steady, but his mind still reverberated with memories that weren't his. He no longer knew where the firstborn ended and where Liam Vance began. Then he felt it, a presence familiar, wounded but alive. Elira. He turned, and there she was. Two Akari flanked her, not as captors, but as escorts. She limped slightly, her left arm bound in a crystalline sling that pulsed with organic light. Her eyes locked with Liam's, and for a moment, the silence between them said more than words ever could. He stepped forward. So did she. No hesitation. No fear. When they reached each other, he gently touched her shoulder. The glow from the memory seed beneath her skin resonated with the glyphs on his arms. Two threads of memory, split but never severed, reunited. Siren's voice returned, deeper now, less mechanical. You have recovered the bearer. The seed is intact. The path remains. Liam looked up toward the glowing map above the chamber. The whole of Originum's history, layered in shifting images and symbols, waiting to be unlocked. We can show them, he whispered. Everything. The truth they buried. Elira nodded. Her voice was hoarse, but clear. We can free them. But Sirenth was not finished. Freedom has a price. The light dimmed. What was hidden was done, so not only by the conquerors, but by the conquered. The full memory will not divide truth from pain. It will not erase guilt. It will expose all. A pause. Then, if awakened fully, history will not spare the Terran Directive, nor the Ikari. Elira's face tightened. Liam glanced at her, then back at the core. So if we share it, he said slowly, we could destroy them both. Yes, Sarenth replied. Or you could teach them to remember differently. And just like that, the chamber quieted again. The light hovered, waiting. Elira stood beneath the swirling archive of light in the Nexus chamber, her breath shallow, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Above her, layers of memory rotated slowly, cities forgotten, voices erased, the faces of ancestors whose existence had been stripped from the stars. Each flicker of light held a truth no one living had seen, and now she could set it free. The echo core hovered silently in the space between her and the altar. No longer dormant, it pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, responding to the memory seed embedded within her. All she had to do was reach out. One gesture, and a network of knowledge would unfurl across every world still listening, human and Ikari alike. But her hand didn't move. Behind her, Liam watched silent. He didn't offer advice, didn't speak her name. This wasn't his choice to make. It couldn't be. She closed her eyes, and she saw everything again. Not just the past, the beauty of the firstborn cities, the betrayal, the exile, but what came after. She saw how fear rewrote history, how nations rose on the back of half-truths, how wars were justified by forgetting who bled first. She had carried these memories alone since birth, unaware of their weight. And now that she truly understood what they were, what they meant, she wasn't sure anyone else could carry them without breaking. Could humanity survive, knowing it was the invader? Could the Ikari forgive the truth of who abandoned them first? If she released the memory, it would be irreversible. No edits, no filters, just pure, collective recall. The kind that didn't just teach. It transformed. Empires could fall. Faiths could shatter. Identities could collapse under the weight of inconvenient truth. She looked down at her hands. They trembled, not with fear, but with responsibility. Sarenth's voice spoke again, not as a guide, but as a quiet reminder. To remember is to risk. To forget is to repeat. The chamber dimmed slightly, waiting. Elira opened her eyes. In that moment, she didn't feel like a vessel, not even a messenger. She felt like a reckoning. She took one step closer to the echo core. The golden glow beneath her skin flared brighter, as if sensing her intent. Liam watched her hand rise, slow and deliberate, toward the core. She wasn't ready to decide, but she was ready to carry it. For now, the Nexus chamber remained silent, save for the low resonance of the echo core, still pulsing between Elira's outstretched fingers. The moment hovered, breathless, fragile. Then the light shifted. Not brighter, not dimmer, just changed. From the far wall, glyphs began rearranging, lines of ancient language folding and unfolding like lungs exhaling meaning. Liam turned toward them instinctively. He didn't know how he could read them, but he could. They weren't speaking in words. They were speaking in memory. A single phrase emerged from the flowing light. Authority transferred. Neutral conduit identified. Liam blinked. Neutral. Sarenth's voice returned, calm, unhurried, but with finality. The bearer holds the seed, but the burden of choice must fall to one untouched by the bloodlines of conflict. One who bears no claim, no vengeance, no inheritance. Elira slowly turned toward Liam, her expression unreadable. You mean him? Yes. Liam took a step back. I'm not part of this. Precisely, Sarenth replied. You're not firstborn, not Ikari, not directive-born. You arrive by chance. You intervene by choice. You carry memory without loyalty, pain without bias. Elira looked at him, really looked. And for the first time since Marcy's, Liam saw hesitation in her eyes. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she knew the weight she was about to ask him to carry. Liam, she said softly, you don't have to. He didn't respond right away. The words didn't come easy. What did he know of legacy? He was a systems engineer trained to fix ships and bypass locks, not to shape civilizations. But the memories that now lived inside him, the echo fragments Sirinth had embedded, had made him more than a witness. He had seen the fall of Originum through firstborn eyes. He had felt exile. He had felt hope, crushed again and again beneath boot prints and blind ambition. And more than that, he had seen what came after. The lies, the erasure, the generations raised on myth, while truth fossilized in forgotten chambers like this one. What happens if I say yes? Liam finally asked. The echo will pass through a neural framework. It will filter truth through a human mind, not a historical algorithm. You will decide what is released, what is held, what is endured. And if I say no, then history will sleep again, waiting for another chance. Liam looked at Elira, and she nodded. No pressure, no persuasión, only trust. He stepped forward, past her, toward the altar. The echo core shifted, splitting like petals into a blooming sphere of living light. Glyphs swirled around him, spiraling toward his chest. One breath, one choice. He closed his eyes. Outside the Nexus chamber, the skies above Marcy's burnt. Akari warships descended in arcs of violet flame, their hulls humming with an eerie, organic energy. From the east, Terran dropcraft slammed into the sands with mechanical precision, black-armored squads spilling out, guns already raised, orders barked through encrypted comms. Above them all, the storm still churned, a wild, unnatural cyclone that hadn't been there an hour before. Lightning carved across the dark sky in pulses that echoed Sirinth's heartbeat deep within the ruins. Then it happened. The ground vibrated, not from orbital bombardment, not from detonation, from inside the planet. The ancient mechanisms of Sanctum Oris had awakened, and they were not designed for diplomacy. Energy surged through the walls like veins pulsing under skin. Glyphs once dormant erupted into blinding lines of force. What had once been stone and silence became a living, shifting organism of defense. And it was rejecting everyone. Akari units reached the outer perimeter first, only to vanish in a blink, swallowed by twisting corridors that didn't exist seconds before. Their screams came seconds later, distorted and far away, as if echoing through time rather than space. Terran squads soon followed, swept into spatial folds that curved back on themselves. Some vanished into thin air. Others emerged in places they shouldn't be, half fused into walls or torn apart by sudden gravity shifts. Inside the Nexus chamber, Liam staggered as the energy from the Echo core surged through him, throwing fractal shadows across the walls. He gasped, clutching his temples as images not his own clawed into consciousness. Memories, warnings, languages that didn't belong to any species alive. Liam, Elira shouted, reaching for him, but her voice warped, the space between them elongating like stretched glass. She took a step, then another, but the floor rippled, fracturing beneath her. Sirinth's voice roared through the chamber. Containment breach. Nexus destabilizing. Conflict exceeds memory threshold. Elira's eyes widened. It's tried to erase us all. Liam looked up, sweat streaming down his face. Then it's fighting back. All around them, the sanctum was collapsing, not in the way of rubble or flame, but in logic. The geometry of the place no longer obeyed physics. Walls split into tunnels that didn't connect. Doors led to nowhere. Time itself felt thin, like glass about to shatter. Outside, the surviving forces of both factions began to retreat, but it was too late for many. A Terran command ship buckled in midair, torn apart by invisible hands. Akari fighters blinked out of phase, their pilots screaming into empty channels. Somewhere above the chaos, the sky cracked open, just for a second. Not with lightning, with memory. A projection, vast and golden, burst across the heavens. Fragments of Originum, the exodus of the firstborns, the betrayal, the wars, the lies, laid bare for all to see. Every soldier on the battlefield stopped, even for just one heartbeat, because the truth, once revealed, didn't care about sides. Back in the chamber, Liam pulled himself upright, staggering toward Elira. The echo core pulsed wildly, threatening to overload his nervous system. Still, he pressed forward, each step a scream inside his skull. "Elira," he called out, "we have to shut it down, or it'll take Marcy's with it." She nodded, steadying herself, fingers glowing faintly as the memorous seed within her responded. Together, they reached the center of the nexus, hands clasping the core. One thought, one breath, one unspoken agreement. Not yet. The galaxy wasn't ready. They reached into the light, together, and pulled. The sanctum screamed, and then everything went white. Silence returned to Marcy's like a held breath, finally released. The collapse of Sanctum Oris had not been total. Somehow, it had folded inward, hiding itself once more in the fractured belly of the planet. Rubble still floated weightless in places, and the geometry of reality still shimmered with soft aftershocks. But the storm was gone. The screams had faded, and Liam Vance was still breathing. He knelt at the edge of the ruined Nexus chamber, the remnants of the echo core flickering faintly beside him. The overload had nearly killed him, burned through the barriers of mind and memory until his consciousness skimmed the edges of a history not his own. And now, he knew too much. Elira stood nearby, arms crossed over her chest, her face unreadable. The memory seed within her had settled. The golden threads no longer glowed. But her eyes held the weight of centuries. "I saw everything," Liam finally said, voice hoarse. "The rise, the exile, the war, what we did to your people." Elira didn't respond. She didn't have to. And this, he gestured to the fragments of the echo core. This could show it all. Every lie unmasked. Every secret broadcast to every system in the Varelian stars. She watched him closely. But it would also burn down everything left. Liam nodded slowly. The AI, Sirinth, had made it clear. Full release of the stored memory wouldn't just shake political empires. It would destabilize entire species. Panic, uprisings, civil wars, retaliation, a collapse not of buildings, but of truth. He could feel it humming beneath his skin, the knowledge aching to be set free. But knowledge without wisdom was a weapon, and Liam wasn't here to start another war. "We share it," he said softly, turning to her, "but only with those willing to carry the weight. Not everyone deserves to know. No, not yet." He stood, eyes steady. "We find the ones who will listen, who will understand it for what it is, a second chance, not a blade." Elira tilted her head, considering him. "You sound more like a firstborn than a Terran." Liam let out a breath, half a laugh. Maybe being close to a memory keeper rubs off. They began the long walk out of the chamber. What remained of Sanctum Oris shimmered behind them, waiting, dormant again, until the galaxy was ready. As they climbed toward the surface, Elira asked, "So, where do we start?" Liam paused, looking out across the ravaged plains of Marcy's. Ships still smoldered in the distance. Armies had fled or fallen. But here there was quiet and possibility. "We start small," he said. "One story at a time. One mind at a time." Elira nodded. "Then let's go find them." And somewhere, far below, Sirinth watched, waiting, remembering. The dust of Marcy's clung to the hull of the stolen scout ship as its engines hummed to life. Liam stood at the open ramp, gazing back at the scorched horizon one last time. The jagged silhouette of Sanctum Oris had already vanished behind a curtain of wind and ash, as if the planet itself was hiding its final truth. Beside him, Elira adjusted the navigation panel, her fingers dancing over glyphs that no Terran mind could fully understand. Yet she moved with purpose, as if each symbol was part of her, etched into her very being. "You sure we're ready?" Liam asked, voice quiet. She glanced over, offering the faintest smile. "We're not, but we go anyway." The memory seed within her pulsed gently, not with power, but with presence, like a heartbeat shared across generations. The burden hadn't broken her. It had focused her. Liam turned his gaze toward the stars. They had no map, no clear destination, just a shared vow to find the voices that still believed in balance, in truth, in memory without vengeance. The Terran Directive would label them traitors. The Akari would hunt them for the secrets Elira carried. The galaxy would not be kind. But the future, Liam knew, had never been shaped by comfort. It was forged by those willing to walk the edge of uncertainty. The ramp closed behind them with a soft hiss. Elira slid into the pilot's seat. Liam took his place beside her. The ship rose, slicing through the thin atmosphere, breaking free of Marcy's gravity with a low, defiant roar. Below, a world of ruin and remembrance slowly faded into shadow. Above, the Varelian stars awaited, and as they vanished into the black, the past remained, buried but not forgotten, waiting not to be unleashed, but to be earned. One soul at a time. Thank you for spending your time with this story. If this story made you feel something, even just a little, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, or sharing it with someone you love. More stories are on the way, and I'll be right here, ready to tell the next one whenever you're ready to listen.